What if I told you that the most stable part of China's economy, the mighty banking sector, is now in serious trouble and is bleeding money? Not struggling, not underperforming. I mean, literally losing money every time it hands out a loan. For the first time in history, China's banks are experiencing what is called a reverse spread, where bad loans are eating up more cash than interest income brings in. That is like running a store where every sale costs you money. And the worst part, this isn't just a temporary dip, it's a systematic collapse in progress. I've seen a lot of warning signs over the years, but what is happening right now in China's banks? It is the financial equivalent of a heart attack. I remember back in 2018, I visited a friend in Hangzhou who worked for a local commercial bank. He was proud of the suit, the title, the connections he had, the office with marble floors. And I asked him, because he's in the banking industry, he knows the many different industries. What's the safest job in China right now? And without blinking, he said, banking, because we are too big to fail. Well, guess what? In 2025, that too big to fail fantasy is cracking. The illusion is gone because the foundation, the ability of a bank to make money on loans, has collapsed. Let's get straight to the numbers. In Q1 2025, China's average non-performing loan ratio, that's how many loans are going bad, surpassed the average net interest margin. That's how much profit banks make from lending. That's what we call a reverse spread. Think about how insane that is. A bank's job is to lend money profitably. If bad loans are eating up more than you earn in interest, you're not a bank. You're a leaking ship. And when banks have to rely on raising fees just to get by, it's a clear sign that the country's economy is seriously on the brink of collapse. The banking sector used to be the most stable industry, not civil servants, but banks. They were seen in China as the ultimate cash cows, guaranteed steady income, fat profits, and no risk of sudden crashes. But by 2025, everything changed. The latest regulatory data from the National Financial Watchdog shows that in the first quarter of this year, the average non-performing loan ratio in China's banking sector surpassed the net interest margin for the first time ever, creating an unprecedented inverted situation. This means banks aren't even making enough interest income to cover their bad debts. It's not just profits shrinking. They're actually losing their capital. So what caused this? One word, LPR, loan prime rate. In the past few years, Beijing has slashed interest rates again and again to stimulate growth. Low interest rates equals more borrowing equals economic boost, right? Not so fast. It might work short term, but when banks are forced to lend at lower and lower rates, they make less and less money. Their margins are squeezed to death. The main culprit is the LPR, the loan prime rate, once hailed as the magic tool to save the market. In May this year, the Chinese central bank cut the 1-year and 5-year LPR by 10 basis points each again. Well, on the surface, it was to boost the market, but in reality, it choked directly the bank's profits. Lower loan rates mean cheaper borrowing costs, sure. But how do banks make money then? With interest margin shrinking nonstop, their profit space is squeezed to the bone. Banks have no choice but to find other ways to make money. And that is why we have seen some obvious changes recently. Suzhou Bank raised its platinum card annual fee to 588 yuan. Lujiang Rural Commercial Bank started charging 4 yuan per ATM withdrawal made outside the local area. Even Bank of China canceled some previously free services like local cash withdrawals. Fees, the annual fees, service fees, financial service, all kinds of fees are creeping up, like slowly, but in many different areas. On June 25th, at the 2025 annual shareholders meeting of China Merchants Bank, known as the king of retail banking, the president, Wang Liang, openly admitted that the industry is at a crucial turning point. Net interest margins have fallen below the bad loan rate. He was blunt. A bank's net interest income should at least cover credit costs, operating costs, and capital costs. If it can't cover all three, the bank's future looks tough. Even though the industry's net interest margin is at its lowest, the gap keeps shrinking. On the asset side, real businesses and local governments are all trying to cut their financing costs. On the liability side, the bank's deposit rates have already dropped to the 1% range, so there's no room to push the bank's costs down much further. With pressure coming from both ends, getting the net interest margin back above 2% is almost impossible. Previously, the central bank's monetary policy report said a net interest margin over 1.8% is reasonable for banks. But in Q1 2025, the actual figures are way below that. And simple math tells us that if the net interest margin drops by 10 basis points, a trillion yuan bank could lose over 1 billion yuan in annual profits. And if bad loan rates rise on top of that, bank profits will take an even bigger hit. Capital adequacy will come under serious strain, weakening the financial system's ability to handle risks. Now, let's talk about the one question that keeps millions of Chinese families awake at night. Are our savings still safe? Technically, deposits under 500,000 yuan per person per bank are insured, but that's no comfort when your life savings exceed that cap, as it does for over 100 million depositors. These are not billionaires. They are parents saving for their kids, college tuition, retirees cashing out their life's work, and middle-class homeowners who just sold their only apartment. And they're watching closely. When Henan's village banks froze withdrawals in 2022, it shocked the country. Hundreds of thousands of depositors were locked out of their accounts. Some are still waiting for full reimbursement to this day. Now, with Yuci Rural Commercial Bank collapsing, the panic is back. Photos of people lining up before dawn to withdraw cash from branches went viral. Silent runs are happening, withdrawals under the radar across rural and urban areas. The central bank keeps saying the system is stable. But when even major outlets like Huaxia Times report rising bad loans and risk provisions at dozens of rural banks from Henan to Jiangxi to Sichuan, trust begins to collapse. And once public confidence is gone, it's not just a financial crisis, it's a full-blown social crisis. So, how are banks trying to survive? They are quietly cutting branches, freezing hiring, slashing salaries, laying off frontline staff, delaying bonuses, selling wealth management products aggressively, even charging service fees on formerly free counter visits. What does this all tell you? It tells you this isn't just about liquidity or tightening margins. This is the entire financial system scrambling to buy time. They don't say it out loud, but the action speaks louder. rural banks laying off 30% of staff, commercial banks consolidating branches in cities, executives quietly cashing out stock options, and regulators, they're helping prop things up with risk resolution funds and local bailouts. But the tone has radically changed. The talk of preventing systematic risk has shifted to managing the transition. That's code for we're going to bleed slowly, just not explode suddenly. Let's zoom out. For decades, the CCP sold one promise to its people. We'll take away your freedom, but we will give you prosperity. Now, that contract is breaking. If banks are unsafe, if jobs are drying up, if real estate no longer builds wealth, then what is left? The myth of permanent growth is shattering. And for a one-party state built on the illusion of control, that's terrifying. You can already see it in the way state media covers these bank losses. The word crisis is never used. Instead, they use euphemisms like profit compression or sector adjustments. But the public sees the truth. More fees, less service, delayed withdrawals, shuttered branches. It all adds up to one terrifying realization. The financial system is running on fumes. This is not a temporary liquidity squeeze. It's not a bad quarter. It's not a mismanaged interest rate cycle. It's a systemic crisis driven by structural decay, debt overhang, fake growth, and policy contradictions. China's banks are losing money on their core function, lending, and they're resorting to fees and financial engineering just to survive. They're passing the pain on to savers, borrowers, and everyday citizens. The economic engine is seizing up, and the trust that held it all together, it's evaporating. This isn't the beginning. It's not even the warning phase. This is the crisis. The question now is how bad will it get? And how fast will Beijing admit the truth? Because denial will not stop a collapse. But for those who see what's coming, maybe it'll buy just enough time to act. If you're still with me, drop a comment. Do you think China's banking system can survive this? Would you keep your life savings in a Chinese bank right now? Let's talk about it. Because when the vault doors close, it won't just be the banks that go down. It will be the last pillar of China's economic miracle. And this is the end of the beginning.